All right. Good evening to those of you who are here, those of you who are listening down the road in the future. Welcome to the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. I am Rod Kuntz hosting the call tonight. And we have Jim Riley, who's with us tonight. And that's co-founder and co-founder Rachel Svoboda, who was absent in wasn't it the big city, the swamp?
Do you call Washington, D.C. the swamp?
Um, I've been
Technically,
there. I have been there, so I'll call it a place where a lot of activity gets little done. How's that?
that seems fair. Yes.
Yeah.
So last week it included all the highlights from that place called the White House to
Yes.
the Arlington Cemetery to the Capitol to the museums. We were on the whole tour. So it was a big week
Well,
last week, but I'm glad to be back. I missed y'all.
well, I'll tell you this. That's a good segue because we live in the best country in the world. We still have the most freedoms of anywhere else you can go, the best quality of life, and so I'm grateful for that. And we all should be grateful. We have the ability to dream big, act according to what we want to accomplish, and just take life by the horns. And that should make us all confident, right? We have a certain confidence as Americans, as free Americans, as entrepreneurs. We have a confidence that's unbelievable. My sister recently spent 10 days in Panama with a school group, and she was sharing me some of her insights there. And it's pretty amazing how the American spirit, what we started with, has actually caught fire in third world countries. And they are actually like we were when we were young and hungry as a country. And as we are as young and hungry entrepreneurs, right? As we want to go forward. So there's a boldness that you have to have and a confidence level you have to just be in the game. And so I thank all of you for being here, being in the game. My hat's off to you. And I actually have spoken on how to gain confidence. And we've actually had a lot of our members in the past um, talk about their lack of confidence and what you can do to get your confidence up. So those are episodes you can find on the back end of the
What
website.
happened?
So go look at some of those if you want. But I'm going to hit this. The pendulum swings both ways, right? There's that boldness and confidence that you need to attack what you've got in front of you, to take on the big challenges, and to know that you're going to win. And the opposite end of that spectrum is what we're going to talk about tonight, and that's overconfidence. And I'm going to kind of swing it back down to the middle with soft skills to tie the whole thing up. So you probably don't often hear on coaching calls someone telling you not to be overconfident. Typically, what you're going to get is that rah rah, go get them. You can do whatever you want, and yes, that's true. You can, but you can also throw water on the fire instead of gas. Maybe not your own fire, but other people's fire, and you're going to need that for the long haul. So being confident, your job to be bold is to influence people to take action that they wouldn't take on their own. That's your job. As whether you're an online influencer, whether you're a campaign manager, whether you're a business CEO, whether you're a manager of a company, whether you are a startup yourself and you're looking to gather customers, your job is to influence people to take action they wouldn't take on their own. Our job here is to get you to take the action that you wouldn't take on your own. All right. And some of that action might be to find that balance, find where your authenticity is going to be the maximum marketable capital that you have. And that can't be by being too bold, too overconfident. And I'm going to hit on some of that because I was actually looking backward in time. And in 2022, in August, I actually did a little session on the difference between being obnoxious and being bold. And some of you, there might be a couple of you here who might have heard that message or remember some of that. So I'm going to hit some highlights of that before we're done. But bold and confident is great. It means you're self assured. You have to believe in yourself and in your product or your service and what you're doing and what you're aspiring to. If you're fundraising and raising capital or trying to get sponsors, you have to have an undying, unwavering belief in all that. And you have to trust in that benefit to your client or your customer. And that's bold and confident. The danger here, though, is overconfidence. So here's just a couple of things, and this is from my own experience. This isn't AI talking. If I did an AI list, it'd probably be 20 items long. But this is what I've seen with people who are overconfident, especially in leadership positions. Number one, they fail to plan for contingencies. Don't be so confident that you're not looking at what bad things could happen, those worst case scenarios. You can't be so confident you don't look at worst case scenarios. So, first problem is failing to plan for contingencies. Second problem is this: it can cloud your judgment. If you're so confident and someone's coming to you with advice or a suggestion, and you're so confident that your way is the only way and it's going to work and everything's fine, everything's hunky dory, that you are clouding your own judgment, you've got a problem. That's just the first two. The third is you can misalign yourself, your business, with bad characters. Someone might come in who's the savior and they've got all the answers and they want this and they want that. And I know several of us have gone into business or partnerships with people that we regret later on because we've misaligned ourselves with bad character. We were so confident that what we were doing was right and that our judgment was sound and that we were going to move forward and that nothing was going to derail us, that we can align ourselves. And I don't mean bad characters, embezzlers, and that sort of thing, but just where the values don't align properly. And it takes you down a different trail. It sets you back in the long run. So really look at your alignment with your constituents, with your partners, with the people you socialize with, and make sure that you're using good judgment and don't be overconfident that you're never going to get it wrong. And I'll use a quick story before we're all done here as well. And the second thing, or the fourth thing now, it can lead to taking shortcuts. And one thing that you've heard Jim, I, and Rachel always say is there are no shortcuts. This is hard work. It's always going to be hard work. There are times that you can go on coast maybe a little bit. You can take that time off, but there are still no shortcuts. You still have to get back to work. You still have to get into the grind. So don't be looking for shortcuts because you're so confident that everything's going well that you can afford to cut a corner here or cut a corner there. Again, that gets back to bad judgment, but don't be falling for shortcuts. And lastly, being overconfident always leads to mistakes and poor decisions. It just does. So look for that balance. Confidence, yes. Boldness, yes. But if you're swinging too far out of that, there's a danger zone. And here's what it is. It's pride. All right? If you're so sure on what you're doing and you get prideful, remember the virtue is not pride. Pride isn't the virtue. Humility is the virtue. So you want to make sure that you're tempering your enthusiasm. Okay? Temper your enthusiasm with sound judgment. You can be excited, you can get other people excited without going over the top. Again, you want to be realistic, you want to be authentic all of the time. When I was in the military, I'll never forget the first time, and I was just a private at the time. I started in the enlisted ranks, and I went into a CO's office, a company commander's office. And I was there for some, I don't know, menial task. It might even been emptying trash or something. I don't know, but I saw a sign on his desk, and it's one of those things as a young man, it left an impression I'll never forget. And I'm sure you've seen this elsewhere. I've seen it since. But the first time I saw it was in the military on a commander's desk, and it said, "Lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine." And yeah, the buck stops here, but that buck stops here at your desk first, right? So it's up to you to plan appropriately. It's not somebody else's job. But when someone in your chain of command, if it's in your chain of command, it's your responsibility to make sure that they are planning accordingly. And it's one of those things, and I think it was another military person who always said, if you want solutions, you don't tell people what to do, you tell them what you want. Tell them what the problem is and let them solve it. It's not always up to you to have the answers. It's not up to you to be the solution man for everything. It's up to you to find the right people. And it's up to you to have people dig within themselves to find those solutions for you. And that can be a humbling experience, especially if you're at the helm, right? You're entrepreneurs, you're running your own show here. But at some point, when you go to that next level of growth and you start hiring people, you need to be thinking about this when you're aligning with other people, and whether that's a business alignment, a professional alignment, or whether you're hiring, you need to make sure you're hiring people. And think about this when you're going through resumes, and you'll get stacks, right? In corporate America, we'd have stacks. There'd be 50, 60, 70 applications for one job, and you were looking for a reason to throw them out. That's what your job was. Your job wasn't to find the best applicant. Your first job was to throw out the bad applicants. And then you got to the good applicants. And then when you get to the good applicants, you want to make sure, yes, that you're hiring that bold and confident person. But we've all seen that bold, confident, arrogant person on the other end that ends up being the bad apple. He's got all the answers. He knows your job better than you do, right? He or she knows your job better than you do. So it's up to you to use your discernment to make sure that you're not hiring or aligning with overconfident people also. Because what are they going to end up doing? They're going to fail to plan for contingencies. They will operate with clouded judgment. They will misalign you with bad characters. They will find shortcuts, and they will make mistakes and poor decisions. So it's up to you when you're hiring, when you're building your business and you go to that next level, whatever that next level is, that you're thinking about this also. And I've seen it, especially in professional sales, those overconfident people that came in and they were going to light the world on fire and do it their own way. And they would burn out within 30 days. And for those of you who don't know, in commission-only sales, a lot of people weren't aware of this, but commission only meant just that. It was commission only. So if you didn't produce a paycheck, right, they had to pay you minimum wage for the hours that you spent on the job. But if you didn't perform, okay, if they had to pay you minimum wage more than one pay period, you were fired. Plain and simple. If you couldn't pay for yourself on the minimum wage scale, you were out the door. And I saw, especially during the Great Recession back in 2008, I watched realtors who were used to making, $1 million sales left and right, easy money, multi-million-dollar deals, come in and they couldn't sell an automobile. They couldn't do it. It's just they were so overconfident that they were fish out of water. So that overconfidence can just lead to sometimes not knowing your own limitations also. So don't get down that arrogant and egotistical road. Make sure that you're tempering your attitude. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is, and I told you I'm going to kind of tie this into something else. I tweaked my back last week. You can't tell now, but I was having trouble bending over, walking, getting in and out of a chair. And I got to see the chiropractor today. So I had a rough weekend. Okay. I spent a beautiful, gorgeous, sunny, warm day outside. Could have been working in the lawn, all the things that I wanted to get done. And I was laid up. And I started watching a series from Britain, United Kingdom, and it's called The Traitors, and Traitors, right? And it is a very interesting premise. They put a bunch of people together, 20, 22 people they start with, and then they select a couple of traitors. Nobody knows who the traitors are, and they opt for a bunch of money, and by the end of the show, if the person who's left standing gets all the money, okay? And If there's one traitor left, just one person who flies under the radar, and that person is there, and everyone else thinks that they're a faithful person, and there's one traitor there, the traitor takes all the money, and the faithful people get nothing. And in our dollars here, it'd be like a couple $100,000. You know, for you spend a couple of weeks, you can make a couple $100,000 if you could get to the end. And it's not so much about lying and cheating and being deceptive. That's what you'd first think, you know, looking at the premise of the movie, to be the person saying, well, no, I'm not, I would never do that to you. But to watch the people who are actually innocent and faithful turning on each other, it was unbelievable. It was probably the most interesting social experiment I've ever seen outside of Survivor on CBS. It was fascinating. And the episode that I just watched, it was a 22-year-old Army engineer. He worked on helicopters, a helicopter tech for the United Kingdom. 22 years old, and he's up against retired school teachers and bankers and realtors and government political analysts. And so he's the youngest one there. And he takes all the money from all these adults and they walk in there and they're savvy, and boy, I know how to read people. They're all of them overconfident. And here's this young kid who walks in there. Anthony, I'm glad you're on tonight. And Sean, I'm telling you, these people, these younger people, had something the others did not. And they knew where their weaknesses were, and they knew how to capitalize on other people's overconfidence. It was absolutely amazing. It paid them big. So to wrap up tonight, I'm going to hit you with this was something I did on AI quite a while ago. And I said, what are the essential, we talk big about soft skills here, and you hear us mention it all the time. And Jim and I, by the way, I looked this up, and Rachel, I'm including you in this too. Between the classes that Jim and I taught at the school last year, and all of these classes that we've done here, not counting the podcasts, we've done over 184 episodes, 30-minute content. And most of that is soft skills. And a lot of that, 90 of those were lesson plans for high school. But the rest of those are on the back end right here on the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate. And they are the soft skills that caused this young man on that episode of Traders to win the 150 pounds, whatever it is. You know, it's UK money. Anyway, soft skills is where it's at. So I asked AI, I said, what are the essential soft skills not explicitly taught in colleges or universities, despite their immense importance in professional and personal life? And here's what AI says. There are 8 of these. And this is what we're trying to get driven in deep, right? And what we're doing here. Emotional intelligence, number 1. And what that is understanding and managing emotions, empathy, interpersonal relationships that are critical in workplaces. It involves self-awareness, self-regulation, social skills, empathy, and motivation. And Jim and I have talked about this before. You can go to, you know, these mastermind groups, and you can get rah and upbeat information, and you get all fired up and walk out of there, and you're going to tackle the world, and then you fizzle out. That's only one of the things, right? Motivation is only one thing. If you're not getting a well-rounded dose of all this other stuff, you're just getting a fraction of what you actually need. It's like taking one vitamin, but neglecting all the other vitamins. Your body needs all of it. So that's one. Number 2 is communication skills. Now, while colleges, what AI says, while colleges often touch on this, the nuances of effective communication including active listening, conflict resolution, nonverbal communication, are usually learned through practice and experience. And that's why Jim and I and Rachel always say, you know, we've paid the dummy tax so you don't have to, right? We're trying to teach you and train you with stories so that you don't have to go out there and learn things the hard way. It's practice and experience, but you can learn from other people's experience. You don't have to go out there and learn it the hard way. That's what's lacking in the academia that's out there in the world now. They're not teaching it the way that you need to be able to assimilate it into your own businesses. Number 3 was adaptability and resilience. That's why we've always talked about failures here, right? Coping with change, being adaptable, bouncing back from setbacks, and crucial skills in a fast-paced world. You know, you might be on top of the world today, and tomorrow you might walk in and everything goes to crap, right? Might lose your biggest account, something goes wrong, you know, a big piece of equipment fails, whatever it happens to be. You've got to be able to adapt and be resilient. And those skills come from real life challenges, or at least the knowledge that yes, it's going to happen, it's going to come, and I'm going to have to react to it when it does. Number 4, critical thinking and problem solving. Colleges provide a foundation, but the ability to analyze, evaluate, and solve complex problems often requires real-world application and practice. And sadly, there's no shortcut to that either. You know, critical thinking and problem solving. And it can start with easy little stuff, right? I don't care if you're doing science experiments with your staff, you know, get people thinking outside the box, right? But you first have to dissect the box. You got to look at the box from the inside out. Start there, then stand on the box and get a different perspective. Number 5, networking and relationship building. We hit this hard, right? Get those emails, capture those emails, reach out to people, build long-lasting relationships. Building professional networks, this is what AI says, and maintaining relationships and understanding the dynamics of networking are typically learned through practical experience rather than formal education. Why? Because they don't teach it in formal education. That's why. You're hearing it here. Build those networks. You know, we've said it 100 times here. Your network is your net worth. So let that sink in. Time management and prioritization. Rachel, thank you for that. I'm 60 plus years old, and you have helped me with my time management. I was always good with priorities, but not managing my time and selecting those priorities. So Rachel has been instrumental in giving us tools and skills to bring that to a whole nother level. Number 7, creativity and innovation. And while some courses encourage creativity, fostering an innovative mindset and thinking, again, this outside the box, I hate that, which is why I always turn it around, often requires individual exploration and exposure to diverse experiences. And this is why it's so critical to not be overconfident. If you're going to have individual exploration and diverse experience, that requires you to get outside of your own thinking. And if you think you already know it all because you're overconfident, you're going to miss the most important part of creativity and innovation. So don't let that happen. And number 8, leadership and teamwork. Leading teams, managing conflicts, and motivating others are skills often developed through on-the-job experiences or specialized programs rather than traditional education. Again, although that's true, I think I've spent my entire life focused on leadership and analyzing leadership. Those of you who have read my book, The Warpath Alliance, that is what I spent, you know, all those chapters on, is what makes a good leader, breaking it down. From Jesus Christ to Genghis Khan, they all had some of the same core elements, some used for evil, some used for good. But leadership and teamwork can, in fact, be taught and developed. You hear natural born leaders and all that stuff. I don't believe that. I think anybody has the potential to be a great leader. I absolutely 100% believe that. And that's part of why I keep doing this. So these skills can be developed through a combination of education, real world experience, mentorship, and continuous self-improvement. That's where we come in. That's where the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate comes in. We're here to help you, let you learn from our experiences, our mentorship, and we work together to continuously improve that stuff. So that's just and believe me, the list of soft skills is probably 17 pages long if I started, just diving into each one of them, going into subcategories. But again, going with AI and what's not the essential skills not taught in colleges, schools, universities, those are the top 8. And you can see where every single one of those are so critical to you advancing your business and advancing yourself on a personal level. So, yes, boldness, confidence, but don't fall in to the overconfident, to the point where you're arrogant and missing opportunity when it presents itself. So I wanted that to be a short nutshell lesson tonight, and I actually went a couple minutes longer than I was hoping I was going to go to. So have your questions ready. Jim, I'm going to let you weigh in first, then we're going to go to you, Rachel. Or actually, Jim, you've been working on another little thing there on the side. I'm going to go to Rachel first tonight, and give us your thoughts on the subject, Rachel.
Well, I think it's an interesting topic because there's that whole like, fake it till you make it point of view, right? And you kind of want to walk in like you know what you're doing. But there's a fine line because especially when you're starting out in your career, you don't know what you don't know yet. And that can definitely jump up and bite you. So it's a respectful type of confidence, I think, and remembering that there are always people who are going to know more and there are always people that are going to know less. And at any given time in your career, you're somewhere in the middle of that. Um, I can think of times where I was overconfident at a young age and with a little bit of seasoning and sometimes stepping on that landmine, I had to learn a hard lesson. I'll tell you guys a funny story. So I was pretty young in my career, and I was supervising a Toyota commercial for NASCAR. It was like a $10 million shoot. We were shooting in North Carolina in January in the snow and the cold, and we had pro drivers there and pro cars, and I was in charge of this whole thing, and I was like very confident and very sharp on all the things that I was doing. And the whole team, agency team, client team, everybody decided to go out to dinner. We were like halfway through the shoot. Decided to go out to dinner at Morton's. I'm like, great, excellent, okay. I mean, let alone I'm like in my early 20s. I had to call my credit card to get it up on my limit because I knew I was gonna have to cover the bill for this for everybody, right? Like, anyways, so I'm in charge of this dinner. Everybody gets hammered. Talking pre-dinner drinks, bottles of wine, post-dinner drinks, and we have a 5 a.m. call time the next morning. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to be in charge of this, and like I got to cut it down, shut it off. Well, the big macho man client was there, like the boss's boss's boss was there, and he ordered a souffle for dinner or for dessert. And the waitress said, kind of came over to me and was like, that's like a 45-minute lead time on that dessert. It's getting really late. And, I'm thinking I got to get everybody at the track at 5. So I canceled his dessert. Oh my God. I will never forget that lesson because not only did the shoot go amazingly well and it was a great success, but I got asked off the account very shortly after returning because it had nothing to do with the work and everything to do with the fact that I was overconfident. Kind of like Robert Greene says in his book, The 48 Laws of Power, like I outshined the master, which is you definitely don't want to do that. So I would have, with a little more seasoning and a little more coaching and guidance and maybe a little bit less confidence, I would have handled that differently. So you just never know like what it is that's going to make the difference. I mean, I didn't lose my job or anything, but I definitely got asked not to work on his stuff anymore. So, it's funny, 20 years later, it's hilarious, but I still never forgot it. So, you just got to kind of take those lessons along the way and, apply them as you will. So, then there's other times where you have to walk in a room. I remember the first time I walked in the room at a luncheon and I had to introduce myself as the owner of a company. And it was the first time I'd ever said it publicly. And I really stumbled over my name and my title. And I was like, oh my God, like that wasn't even a hard question. But now I've said it thousands of times and it's second nature and it's no big deal. But like that imposter syndrome and that, confidence that you have to like grow and develop and nurture as you progress in your career and you take on new challenges, you'll continue to get opportunities to practice that. So, especially if you're a multipreneur and you start a new business, right? Like you might get very cozy as the CEO or the president of one of your companies, and then you start another one and you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's new and uncomfortable. But just remember, you've earned that. You've come a long way. So I hope that is a good share. That's helpful.
It
Maybe
was a
some
good share. I was just wondering if you followed up with that, the boss's boss's boss, and maybe sent him a souffle in the mail or something to make up for that. But
Oh my God. I think I'm still a little embarrassed by it, and I've never run into him again, and I don't want to.
life lesson. I love it. Well, thanks, Rachel. Jim, I'm going to go to you next.
Rachel, good job sharing that story. I've been in those environments before. Matter of fact, I'll share a quick story. I think this is just about being human, right? For everybody. When I was new at Kettle One Vodka as a vice president of marketing, I had to do an event at the Houdini Mansion, and it was a rock and roll party in LA. And I thought I'd be cool and wear like the garage style shirt, with the leopard collar and stuff, whatever. Young as well. And the dress code at Kettle One was suit and tie, no matter what. Well, all the executives and the owner showed up to the party, and here I was in this crazy shirt, thinking I was all cool. Well, then they said, well, let's go to dinner afterwards. And here I was sitting at a Morton style restaurant. Everybody's in suits, and I'm in my leopard collared shirt. So it was embarrassing for me at the moment. So I get it. It wasn't quite canceling souffle. Anyways, okay, 3 things as it relates to the subject matter. Actually, 2 things that relate to the subject matter. First of all, coming from a racing background, you can show up to the track overconfident in what you think you can do, and you could quickly be outshined by the competitors. Or maybe they spent more time on the track than you, or they did their homework better, or their mechanics did a better job prepping the car. There's a lot of things. And most often in any type of racing, your overconfidence can cause you to lose the race, or not win, or not place, or whatever it looks like for you. When we were running Spartans, Samantha and I, what we were always told by our trainer is, you never know who's going to show up to a race. So you need to be prepared on all aspects, but not be overconfident. Because if you go in overconfident, Rod, you kind of touched on this, you may not do your homework properly. You may not have the tools in place properly. You may not have done the best you could for preparation because of that confidence. So I think it's a great topic. You might be real quick to say, wait, I thought we were supposed to be confident in our knowledge and all this. Yes, you are. And yes, you need to approach your clients with confidence, but that overconfidence could kill you. So find the line between the two and run that line, and it won't fail. My second example is, I have a client that his primary job with me right now is public speaking. And I have given him every tool possible, including write some of those speeches, back at my office, taking the time to write the speeches, thinking about every aspect of what we need to do, the message, that we're trying to give, the referral to that wonderful book that Rod always talks about, was it Stand Like Lincoln, Talk Like Churchill? All these things. But this person, and for good reason, he's confident in his ability. He's given plenty of public speeches. He goes and wings it. We go over our time allotment. We go too far under our time allotment. We don't get the message out that needs to go out at that particular time to that particular audience. And I don't want to say that they're misses. We're winning. But here's the difference. I'm not going to give away my entire next podcast with Rod and what I'm going to speak on with the group next when I'm running the call. But there's a difference between being good and great. And by preparing and planning and really thinking about the whole process, that's the difference between good and great. And I'm going to give some examples down the road on my next call and on the podcast of what it's like to be great, but not being overconfident to pretend like you're great. So you could get yourself in trouble, but you could always be better if you allow that confidence to get out of the way. Okay, last thing, I'll give back to you, Rod. Right now, if you've got social media, or maybe Anthony can do this. Anthony, put your Instagram handle in the chat here. Okay, so go down to the chat, put your Instagram handle for everybody to see. I want everybody to here to follow Anthony on social media. Okay, and here's why. Anthony had a wonderful post today about his life going to a speaking event, which I was a part of with a lot of great influencers. And Rod kind of touched on it earlier. You know, everybody's got these great things to say, but it's what you do with what's being said that will make the difference. And Anthony's story today, I'll let you go find it and read it. He posted it this morning, talks about him leaving that event, absorbing what he learned, and making a change in his life. And he's living that change right now. And he's being offered all kinds of opportunities. I coached him through something. He's in a position where he can make a decision whether or not he wants to take those options or not. Okay. So this is what we're talking about, is utilizing these soft skills, listening to others, using what they have to say, but then applying it, not just hearing it, not just showing up on Monday nights, but applying it to what you're doing. And that's what Anthony's story is about. So Anthony, thanks for posting that, first of all. And then I just wanted to say, it's so great to see so many people on the call tonight. And I just hope that you're using this tool when you get off the call and that you're reaching out to us. There's a few of you that I haven't heard from for a while, and that's okay. But I'd love to be here for you. Spring is in the air. Everybody seems to be ramping up right now. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody's ramp up as we get into summer and things get exciting. So Rod, thanks for the topic. Good job on the call.
All right. Hey, thanks. Anthony, you've got a question here, and I'm not exactly sure on the second part of it. How do you get into the rhythm or pattern of reframing questions so that you can still hold that respect or title, but not be overreaching? And I'm not sure exactly. Give me an example here so I know what context you're coming at this from.
For example, how Rachel was talking about how she was still a little new and she didn't want to come off as arrogant, but she still wanted to present herself in a professional manner. How do you walk that fine line without being rude?
Well, I'll say this first, and then anyone else who wants to weigh in can. The first thing is every situation is going to be different. Every situation. First, trust your instinct. Always trust your gut. And if you're in charge of something, never step on someone else's toes. That's the first thing I would say. Never get into somebody else's business. Don't tell someone else. In fact, my children will tell you this also. We have a rule, my wife and I, in our house, and that is advice unasked for is criticism. And I'm not out there to criticize anybody. If somebody asks for advice, I will give it to them. But and that should be your motto going into just about every situation. If someone's not asking for your advice or your help, don't volunteer it. Don't give it to them. There are other ways of getting it out there. That's where you start doing the questions. Have you tried it this way? Right? Not let's do it this way, but have you tried it this way? Or has anyone ever talked about this? Or I saw this when I was at a different seminar, or I learned this particular tool. Do you think that we could, it might help us here? You know, it's how you reframe that question. And again, every situation's different, but I think the first rule is stay in your lane, you know, and let other people have the opportunity to fail. But don't criticize them for the failure. Help them get beyond the failure. And even if that's yourself, don't criticize yourself for the failure. Get beyond that failure. Right? So, Rachel, go ahead.
I want to add on to that. One is, all right, if it's in the environment of yourself versus the people that are working for you, like that's a distinction. If it's the pep talk you're giving to yourself, you need to know, like sometimes I'll do this before an event or before I'm presenting or before I'm walking in somewhere. I'll take a moment and I'll kind of make myself and my energy as big as I possibly can. Like I'll stand up as straight as I can. I'll breathe as big as I can. I'll kind of like make myself big and I'll pep talk myself. And now this is for me, but like, I'm kind of like, oh God, my shoes are so fabulous today. Your hair looks so good today. Like I'll start kind of giving myself those compliments that I need to hear to make me like feel good on the inside. Right. I'll even go so far as give myself a little high five. That psychologically actually helps. Mel Robbins, I think, wrote a whole book about this high five culture. So sometimes I have my kids give themselves a high five for that self pep talk. now transitioning to when it's the people who work for you. It's, I think, tricky to give direction, without being bossy. I really like to lead people down their own path of solution. And the way I do that is I ask people questions, giving them the benefit of the doubt most of the time. I'll be like, let's say I asked someone to deliver and they were late. And I know very well that they haven't done it if they're late. So I'll approach it like, hey, in case I missed this, did you already send it? Right? And then they're like, they're not on their heels. I'm kind of putting the onus on me, like, hey, maybe I missed it. Or sometimes I'll say, if it were me, I would do it like this, but you're welcome to do it a better way. If you can find a better way, try that. I also like to say, like, just thinking ahead, X, Y, and Z, are you thinking the same thing? Like, or is that how you're planning to do it? And they very well may have not even thought of a plan yet. So I've kind of given them the answer instead of just asking them to do it, because sometimes people get stuck. They don't know where to start. So I kind of give them the answer and then say, hey, well, what were you going to do? And most of the time they'll repeat it back to me. It's like, oh, wow, great. I'm glad that I thought that, glad that you thought that through. That was great. Good job. I really like them to feel like my expectation is that they're winning. And that creates that yes culture. So they're not afraid to ask me questions later because they already know that I already am their number one champion. I'm already like expecting them to be fabulous. So I also like to give people a critical path in terms of like dates or deliverables or action steps, and be like, this is like the road to success. And that also is a non-threatening way to motivate people to do things. Or and then if it's a client and you're like harassing a client because maybe they owe you money, right? Or you asked them to provide something, right? I always like to use the assumptive close with that, because they're already engaged with you. So I always have been like, hey, like, I know you're going to pay your invoice, but just in case it's fell through the cracks, right? So make them feel good, find a compliment in there, and to start somewhere. There you go.
Thanks, Rachel. And Heidi, thanks for your input there, open-ended responses and questions. That's a skill that you actually just practice, never a yes, no, always, leaving it open for discussion, basically, asking for those opinions. And that's why I think we mentioned this on last week's call, or maybe I have it. It seems familiar to me somewhere. Maybe I've shared it with you. I don't like choice A or choice B. I'm always looking for alternative C. So always leaving someone a way out, and that's one of Dale Carnegie's, How to Win Friends and Influence People also, right? Always let someone save face. You never want to, make somebody feel like they have completely failed, even if they have, right? Give them that room to lift themselves back up and let them know that you're there to help. So I don't know. That was kind of an open-ended question you asked us. So I don't know. You're nodding, Anthony. Did we cover it in several different ways? Okay. All right. Any other questions out there? Doesn't have to be on topic, off topic. I'm not going to waste your time. All right.
Wait,
Well,
hang on. I have a fun share.
Fun's fun.
You guys might be aware there's this thing going around. It's called the Distinguished Speaker Series. And I don't know if you guys have it in other parts of the country, but it's happening around California for sure. And tonight I'm going to hear Lieutenant General H.R. McMaster. He was assistant to the president for national security affairs from 2017 to 2018. He's renowned and distinguished as a preeminent warrior thinker and iconoclast general. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. he's kind of new to me. I'm not sure where he stands politically. I hope I didn't offend anyone by mentioning it, but I'm just saying. But I'll learn more about him tonight when I go to this distinguished speaker series. And I've also heard, like, they have everyone from, like, Goldie Hawn came and spoke on something, and then they had Liz Cheney come and speak on something. And so they have people from all different walks of life and different political views. And it's just really fascinating. So if they come into your city or town, I recommend it.
Rachel, thanks. I'm going to use that opportunity to remind everybody on this call tonight too. We had talked about public speaking a while back, and Jim even mentioned it tonight. It is imperative that you all get comfortable speaking in public. And this sort of thing, whether it's distinguished speaking series, or if you're on YouTube and watching TEDx talks, you need to be watching other people and learning from them, and not just their content, but watch how they deliver, watch how they engage with the audience. Those are the soft skills. How they're actually able to, speak to an audience like you're an individual in that audience, and yet it's collective at the same time. That is a skill that, again, I mentioned it before. If I could teach any of you anything that would put you over the top, it would be to manage and get really good at public speaking. It will make all the difference in your businesses and in your personal lives. And Rachel, it doesn't matter what the political thing is. Again, if you're going to listen to someone speak and you're analyzing the content of their mannerisms, as well as the content of their speech, you're there to learn, not to argue, not to, get entrenched or whatever else. You're there to expand your own horizons and think critically about those things. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And by the way, Amy Cuddy's TEDx talk on body language is exactly what you do, Rachel. You give yourself a pep talk, you stretch out, you step up. I mean, there are things that you do, and it's not just for public speaking. It's for anytime you're going into an uncomfortable situation, even if you're having to go talk to somebody who owes you money, which is the worst possible thing. I'm glad you brought that up. Nobody likes to ask for money. Nobody. So even if they owe you the money and it's rightfully yours, people still don't like to have to ask. It's demeaning. So you have to find good ways to broach those subjects. So get good at it and practice.
And Alex, go real quick while you read those questions. You got
ahead.
2 questions up there. So I have a private coaching client that talked about, she's an executive in a big company on the East Coast, and she talked about aspiring to be a public speaker and do a podcast and do these private retreats and all these things. She wasn't really sure exactly which one she wanted to focus on first, but I will tell you, in her company, she speaks in front of her employees, and sometimes that's more than 100 people. She speaks at business meetings, things like that, right? So she's well versed in it. She is being asked now, because she just lobbed it out there in the universe. She just booked a gig at the end of this month for $2,500. So we're working on what her press kit looks like, what she's going to talk on, all these things. And she's telling me about this, like, hey, they're going to pay me $2,500. I said, that's great. Are they going to cover your travel, your room, all this stuff? We start walking through that. She says, no, it's on Zoom. Right? So she's on Zoom. She's going to get paid $2,500 to do a 1-hour call on Zoom. She doesn't even have to go. Everybody in this community has an expertise in something, all the way down to the youngest people on the call. You can convert that to another way to make a living or how to make money, right? And then back and forth that skill set. So when Rod says practice your speaking, I mean, there's some true value to that. And I'm helping somebody do that now. And I've been paid to speak to before. Not $2,500 for a 1-hour Zoom call though. That's a pretty good first time deal. So anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there.
Thanks. All right, Anthony. Well, gosh, we're going into a different avenue here, public speaking. Anthony's question is, how do you decide on what you want to present your story? And this is what I'll challenge you right now, anyone here, because that's how I broach meeting strangers. If I were to come up to you as a complete stranger, Anthony, and I didn't know anything about you, I didn't follow you on Instagram, I didn't know you from Yes, I didn't know anything. And if I just met you, I'd say, Anthony, I don't say, what do you do? Or where do you work? I say, what's your story? That's, and what comes out, as soon as somebody says that, what comes out? I have never had somebody say, gosh, let me think about that. You know, where does your story start? And, you know, it's usually going to be where you know, where you were born and raised, but the pivotal events in your life. So what's your story? You should be able to say your story in 2 minutes. You should be able to sum up your whole life, your story, in 2 minutes. And you should also be able to carry it out to 7 minutes and 15 minutes and an hour. 50 minutes, a keynote. You should be able to do a keynote on your story, but you should also be able to encapsulate that in 2 minutes. So that's your challenge. Anybody who wants to know how to start that, start with a 2-minute story. It's just like taking your business plan and doing an executive summary and then just doing a mission statement, right? You can consolidate and condense it. 2 minutes, 7 minutes, 45 minutes. And you'll be amazed. You'll know what stories to put in to illustrate the points and that sort of thing. And you'll develop several stories. You should have several by the time you're done, several keynotes. So, and how do you decide what to share and what not to? It depends on who you're speaking to and what the audience is. And sometimes they will ask you, and that's what you should. If people are asking you to speak, say, do you have a topic? What's your audience like? What is it you want them? Do you want them motivated? Do you want them taught? Do you want this to be like a lesson, or do you want them inspired, or you want this funny? I had a eulogy for my mom's funeral a couple of months ago. And I was talking to my siblings, and they were talking about a funeral they had just been to, and it was funny and all kinds of stuff. And I said, well, is that what you want me to do with moms? And I literally put in 3 funny stories that I didn't have anything. It was a very serious eulogy for me. And I put in 3 funny stories, and I had people laughing. And this was in a Catholic church, mind you, and I got applause at the end. In a Catholic church, people were applauding. So it's all about the audience and what they need. It's not about you and your story. It's what your story does for the audience. So get yourself out of the way with that. Your story is a trigger to help the audience. Does that help? Yes,
the way,
Rachel.
I want to add to that. Okay. You should also have a bio written about yourself on the shelf, a long bio and a short bio and a headshot ready to go, like at any given time. So like today I get this email, there's this opportunity to speak at this upcoming executive event, the end of the month. And I, of course, reply right away. And I say, yes, happy to do it. And they're like, great, we just need your bio and your headshot by the end of the week. Hope you can get it to us, right? Like they assume that I don't have one, or that I'm like going to be caught on my heels with that dumbfounded question. And I'm like, 5 minutes later, here's my bio and my headshot, no problem. It's like brushing your teeth. It's not a surprise. Every night you're going to want to brush your teeth. When you start a business, you're running your business, you got to have a bio and a headshot. Basic fundamentals. So, you know, I want to make sure all of you guys have those tools ready to go. It should be that easy to say yes.
Thanks, Rachel. Good reminder. I'm going to go into the second part of your question here too, Anthony. Do you ever pivot a speech? Yes, you do in mid-speech because the audience reacts in a certain way, and how do you read them? Just like you read people. If you think of the audience not as an audience of individuals, but as an audience of one, the more you start speaking in public, you will feel the energy in the room. And you will also be able to find pockets of negative energy sometimes, right? I mean, you will know where they are. You will be able to sense it and feel it. And the way I handled it is I always went for the negative pockets first. I always eliminated my competition. I engaged them. If I knew someone was like, you know, they gave you the body language, or they're like scoffing, or like, oh yeah, I've heard this before, I'd call them out. Just literally call them out and say, oh, so I know you think you've heard this before, but let me tell you, this is not the same as what you've heard before, and here's why. And once you call them out, they become engaged and part of it. It's a whole different animal. And I know Jim and Rachel, you've done enough public speaking as well, and maybe others on the call here, but there's an energy that an audience brings, and it's engaging and it's inspiring. and it's palpable. You can feel it, and it's it's something that you react to just like when you're talking to a person, though. I guess that's what to sum all that up. But yeah, you should have the ability to pivot your speech and go a different direction with it. But part of that's just practice and your gut. You know, it's you're everyone on this call is a smart individual, and I trust you that you would be able to handle whatever was out there. But just know that yes, it does happen, and be prepared for it.
Yeah,
It's a derail moment.
I'll give you a quick trick on that, Anthony, and anybody else. I always get to an event early when I'm there to speak, and I go meet as many people as I can, right? Just quick little conversations. That way, when you're on stage, you have a personal interconnection with all those people, and maybe you learn something about somebody while you're out in the audience. I'm sure you've heard other speakers do this, right? You can refer to that story while you're up on a stage, which will help engage more people while you're at it, right? And typically when I'm going up to do a speech, I know the content so well, it becomes more of an outline, and it allows me to pivot within that outline, within the subject matters. And maybe that story falls in one of those subjects, right? So yeah, it just goes to knowing your topics, what you need to say, and then you can add value on the fly if you need to. So good question, by the way.
All right, let's see the other questions here. Long and short bios. Oh, it looks like we've all ended up with a homework assignment on here. Get your long and your short bios done. Make sure you get a decent headshot. Jim told me a couple of years ago he didn't like my headshot, so I'm behind the 8 ball. I'm getting a new one, but I'm getting older, so I have an excuse. I'm going to stick with the older, younger headshots. Heidi, you're saying no? Go with the old? Oh, you haven't seen me in my prime. Come on.
Oh, no. You need to redo your headshot every few years. Like, there's no, like, set it and forget it. I recently got called out on the fact that I am not currently looking anymore like my headshot, and it's time for a new one. So if I can do it, you can do it.
But I look the same.
You're
Smiling emoji.
you're like a fine wine. You're just getting better with age. You don't want to, rob the world of that.
All right. I
All right,
will
guys.
accept the challenge and get a new headshot out there too. All right. You got it, guys.
Let's
I'm
wrap
not
it.
going to take, anything else, Jim? You're smiling.
Nope, let's wrap it
All
up.
right. We'll wrap it up. Everybody have a great rest of your week. If you've got any questions, concerns, anything comes up, reach out to myself, Jim, or Rachel. We're here for you all week long. All right. Good night.